So, Zorodzai, it's over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much. I did not think that we'll be the first people to talk, but anyway, now that you have given me the floor, would like WHO at headquarter level, which is where our Director General, Dr. Tedros, is, and he always holds regular media briefings where media personnel from all parts of the world are invited and can ask any questions as the pandemic moves. And then at regional level, which is the African Regional Office, we also have media briefings, the regular ones, that are led by Dr. Moeti and our emergencies department. And we are basically, as an organization, looking at how best we can give technical support to countries and to the media would be required. In Zimbabwe, for example, we have media personnel who are free to talk to WHO WHO representative, Dr. Gasasira, on and ask questions on WHO's position. And in addition, we also have our technical staff who are also ready to support not only the ministry, but also to support the, to give information to the media. And regularly, we have updates that are coming from WHO. As you are well aware, the pandemic has got many faces and it's changing all the time. And we as WHO, whenever we have new information, we are ready to share this with the media and the population at large. Thank you very much. Over.
Rodzai, moving over to you, Jane, how has been your experiences as community radios in Uganda when it comes to reporting on COVID-19? Hello, Jane. Okay, Jane, I have asked that you unmute yourself. Are you able to unmute?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please do go ahead.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you, ZACRAS, UNESCO, and EU, everybody that is behind, making this possible. The Ugandan experience has been, characterized with a number of learning new things and, being very has been unprecedented before. Of course, there has been disruption in normal operations, normal editorial meetings, the way things were going on before, there was that disruption. So very quickly, community radios had to learn to adapt to the new normal under the circumstances where things were not, where members and people were not able to come together. What then, did these community radios have to do? And so one of the things that has come to the forefront has been the fact that community radios needed to adapt to using technology as much as possible, and also to adapt to using mobile reporting techniques as opposed to a lot of one-on-one interviews that had been the case. So in the experience of Speak FM, where I work, but also for many of the community radio stations that are part of a network that I coordinate, we had to get onto crash trainings and ability to enable members and
Hello, sorry, Jane. We seem to have lost you. Are you able to repeat that point? We seem to have, I think she's challenges. Maybe, yeah, if we can move to Dr. Mtambudzi. Doctor, welcome once again.
More of mobile phones, doing interviews on physical one-on-one interviews. This that transport restrictions were there of moving too much.
One of the challenges with online meetings is always around connectivity. I'm hoping that she'll be able to join us very soon. Now we'll move to Dr. Mtambudzi. Dr. Mtambudzi.
Yes, good morning, Vivian. Good morning, colleagues. My name is Mutambudzi. I'm Director of Media Services in the Ministry of Information, Publicity and Broadcasting Services, responsible for media services. So yes, the topic here that is to maybe go some way to mitigate or ameliorate or reduce the effects of fake news on our society. As a Minister of Information, Publicity and Broadcasting Services, our mandate, maybe I should to get an informed nation and also to get an informed international community. All these aimed at making Zimbabwe competitive, galvanizing and mobilizing our people for national prosperity, and making sure that they are safe from threats that include such pandemics such as COVID-19. So we want the people of Zimbabwe to be informed, and informed by the truth, not fake news. But unfortunately, maybe let me first just talk about the setting in the country. We set up in the interest of ensuring that we do, the government set up a COVID response mechanism, which is headed by Vice President Kembo Mohadzi, and it has got vast, numerous committees under it that look into various areas in a combined effort or a collective effort to find solutions to issues to do with the pandemic. And one of those subcommittees is the Information and Risk Communication Subcommittee. And the Ministry of Health also has got several pillars that are around functional areas that are critical in also its technical response to COVID. And then there is coordination and liaison between these committees, including the Information and Risk Communication Committee, with the Ministry of Health and other Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, Ministry of Home Affairs, and others, so that the government speaks with one voice about issues. But some of them, we have actually brought in all communications experts from public and private sector, from the public and private sector, to participate as a way of ensuring that we have a melting pot about ideas around how to respond to COVID. And then we have tried to put up platforms. Thanks to the pandemic, I don't know whether I should thank it, but government systems have been improving in terms of adopting technology to speak out and give out information so that the nation is informed, so that journalists don't have to struggle to access information so that they can write about things that they want. But yes, we have had the instances where mainstream media has been responsible for fake news, but that's not as widespread. Fake news is a problem online in terms of social media exchanges. And this is aggravated by the fact that control or regulation or the governance of the internet is still something which is aloof, and as such people, citizen journalists are free to throw in what they want. And our response as much as possible, and also to trace the issues that are coming up online and ensure that any issues that are negative or that are not true are then debunked by giving out the correct information about what it will be obtaining. And the areas or topics that I've actually seen that are dominated by fake news have to do with the conspiracy theories around the origins of COVID, for instance. Then also we've had instances where both the mainstream media and some online publications or individuals seek to sensationalize issues for their own personal interests or gains, particularly issues to do with the politicization of COVID issues. So you then find people wanting to gain political mileage by making false claims around the pandemic, or in the interest of ensuring that they then gain a secondary benefit from it, which is issues to do with the politics. Then we also have had false information around the holy anointed, they could be waters, they could be masks, they could be a lot of other things, which we think affect communication in a positive way, in a manner that will influence society to respond positively, so that we can mitigate the negative threats that come from COVID-19. So we also have situations in which the people don't have the masses display. If you analyze what is happening, if you analyze just find that the public will have no confidence about what is happening. Then the last point I would want to point at this point is that the other aspect that we find is how much how can the legal jurisdiction be used to control fake news. It's difficult because you find that the notion of fake news or aspect of fake news, despite the negative aspect, it kind of contradicts with the notion of freedom of expression. Our constitution provides for freedom of expression, such that if somebody then lies around an issue, if somebody ends up saying something which is not true, which affects the percolation of correct information in our society, when you try to prosecute or get them to be put before the law so that they can account for their lies, people will cry of expression. So we then have to balance how much pressure we put, legal pressure we put on individuals to account for lies or fake news, against the idea of making the country be seen as a pariah, kind of dictatorial, heavy-handed, and Machiavellian. So we are cognizant of the fact that people sometimes peddle fake news, but how to deal with it is not easy as a government. That basically is what I'm trying to say. Yet that fake news affects the kind of information that gets to the people. It affects people's ability to respond positively to the national call, so that we can be galvanized as a people to respond in a fashion which is more effective against the pandemic. I submit.
Thank you, Dr. Mtambudzi. For those who have questions or comments, you can either use the chat option or you can raise your hand and we recognize you during the plenary session. But I note that you highlighted issues around the politicization of reportage on COVID-19. But what would be your comments in relation to sensitivity when it comes to reporting on COVID-19? I remember at one time there was an outcry in terms of the profiling of certain races or ethnicities as being the major purveyors of COVID-19. What has been your observation in relation to sensitivity by the media when it comes to reporting on COVID-19?
The question is coming to me?
Yes, it's directed to you.
Well, you know, the issue is, or most of the stuff that comes up has to be balanced against the idea of freedom of expression. So, but honestly speaking, it's not proper for a media house to sensationalize. For instance, I will remember the Minister of Health, then Minister of Health, gave a statement to the media, exclusive actually, and explained that no, we are having a situation in which some of the medical kits that we received in the country are not 100% foolproof, such that we have withdrawn them. They are not being used, and we are going to return them back where they come from. But the heading was Zimbabwean kits are fake or something like that, and everyone who was reading was then starting to have no confidence in the whole system. So that creates that's being sensational in my view. I think for purposes of maybe getting improved sales, because people, when they see such a heading, they then buy a lot of that paper. But surely can we sacrifice aspects of increased sales versus alarming or causing despondence in the nation in a fashion that threatens greater humanity, society? Instances of news sensationalization, mostly abandoned online, but it's not proper. And how are we dealing with it as a government? We continuously issue out statements on media briefs, but also we make sure that all what is government is doing is given out by way of weekly briefs that are done after cabinet. So issues to do with COVID come out after cabinet, but also the Minister of Information makes sure that she reports on COVID issues on a weekly basis, on a separate day. And then this in addition to sector-specific pressers or media releases that are done to address specific issues, including pronouncements that are done by the president. Like, for instance, yesterday when he made a pronouncement, I then circulated his speech to all the media houses. So we are continuously dishing out information. And this, I think, should also address Jane Angom Mujoma's question that what is. Yes, so we hope that as we dish more and more accurate, correct information about the pandemic, we win on our side or get more and more people being informed of what is happening, and therefore that raises also confidence. The other question maybe I should just attend to is the question that says, why does the public have no confidence in government? I can't answer that off the cuff, Dr. Esimpov, because I will need to do a survey, a research of some sort. Otherwise, I will just be thumb sucking. I don't know. There are various reasons. People need to do baseline researches into such issues.
Thank you, Dr. Mtambudzi. Quite a number of observations that you have raised today. Possibly after I get Mr. Maduku's submission, I'll also move back to Zoro so that she can highlight some of the observations that they've made on their side as the World Health Organization. Mr. Maduku, Mr. Mtambudzi highlighted a number of issues in relation. I note that in Chipinge, you're using quite a number of platforms. Sorry, Mr. Maduku, it appears there is somebody speaking in the background.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, so Dr. Mtambudzi raised a number of issues in relation to how the media has been reporting on COVID-19, issues around politicization of the COVID-19 story, also issues around sensationalism when it comes to the same COVID-19 story. He also spoke about structures that have been put in place by the Zimbabwean government to try and ensure ease of access to information by the media. And you being based in Chipinge and based also on the online platforms that you're using to try and distribute information on COVID-19, how has been your experience as Vemuganga?
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm trying to put the video on. Let me check. But okay. And I'm happy to be part of this conversation. It is enlightening, and I'm happy that it has been successful. Right, for the question that we have asked, let me first highlight that as Vemuganga Community Radio, we are an initiative from Chipinge that came into being to respond to the lack of information that are pertinent to the people in Chipinge, particularly in that Chipinge is a bit distanced from where most information is generated. So sometimes information reaches people a bit late. So as an initiative, one of our major value or objective in existence is to try and share information. So from the way you have asked them, I can respond to in that, firstly, in terms of how we access the information, as Dr. Mtambuzi has said, has been particular, sometimes communicated possibly in English. So one of our ways has been to try and make that information sort of like localized into some Ndao language, for example. So we have tried to transmit that information into Ndao. So the challenge has been when information reaches people in Chipinge, I think it also appears to other communities beyond Chipinge. Before it is localized, sometimes it is misinterpreted or it becomes part of it's downplayed. So what Dr. Mtambuzi is saying, for us, we have a feeling that there is so much need that the space that we use to communicate, which is for us online, if it is not localized, sometimes people tend to think that comes from the online. So abused, but because we have responsible personalities, like what we try to do, when that information is transmitted, we try to localize and ensure that it is communicating exactly what it should mean. Or if it needs interpretation, we try to make sure that the interpretations are relevant to the people. So what then becomes our key challenge as an initiative, especially with this COVID-19 statistics, people tend to worry if the statistics are kind of centralized. Most of the things that we receive comes to say, there's been testing yesterday and it appears like it's continuously from a centralized point. So it continues to confuse people who feel that it is somewhere they distance themselves from the statistics, they distance themselves from these messages that are sensitive and say, if it is so that becomes the challenge. So to speak also on my part to say in my contribution for the day, I feel that the major challenge with our communities has been misconceptions or what we can say social myth. To say when we talk about such issues that communicated online, for example, people tend to feel it could be not about them. So when you begin to sensitize people to respect what they communicated by the local people that they trust, by the local people who speak their language, by the local people who understand their culture. And it is at that level that this social myth that we are miscommunication has to do with three things that I may highlight. In these statistics are not about us. because there's been where the testing centers has not been like localized. It has been district hospitals, like in Chipinge, we talk of our Chipinge hospital. If someone is in Chisumba or someone is in Mabe or in Veneca, a place that is a bit far away from the district where it's testing, they don't get the feelings, they don't get the emotions of what they need to do in terms of responding to COVID. So they end up wanting to say, no, they continue to behave our friends, even if they have relatives who are crossing the border or running away from quarantine centers, they say they are relatives, we should be guided by our Ubuntu without necessarily respecting the fact that this COVID-19, this pandemic is very serious and it's global. It's not necessarily something that needs to be seen as urban or from the global world. The one other thing that is also very important, like it has been said by the previous speaker, has to do with the communication channel. I think when COVID started, there's been some statutory instruments put across to try and guide the way people behave. For us and our experience in Chipinge, as Vemka commented, these statutory instruments, there's been so much emphasis in trying to deal with people who goes against the statutory instruments, without also sometimes focusing on why people are behaving the way they are behaving. So at the end of the day, we find that people continue to behave in their cultural way, in their ethnical understanding, and feel like the statutory instruments are not well explained.
Thank you so much for that. I'll now quickly move back to Zora. There are a number of issues that have been highlighted by some of the panelists when it comes to information dissemination, politicization of the COVID-19 story, sensationalism, and also more recently what Mr. Maduku spoke about in terms of ease of access to the information. As the World Health Organization, what has been your observation when it comes to how the COVID-19 story has been reported by the media in Africa, and also Zimbabwe included?
Let me just start off by saying that, Vivian, this is the first epidemic of its kind in the social media era. And it is a huge pandemic, and it's getting information from all kinds, whereas before we had your print and broadcasting. If people didn't get it from the newspaper, they got it from they got the news from the radio or television. But at the moment, we are getting information from all angles. And as Dr. Mtambudzi said, there is a lot of sensationalism. What we have found is that people did not want to believe that this, for example, is a disease that will come from, that will hit all parts of the world as it is. So we had, people saying people of the darker hues who are dark-skinned would not get this information, would not get the disease. And this actually became fatal because people did not take this seriously. The information was out there. WHO and partners in collaboration with ministries of health were giving out, was met with misinformation. And the unfortunate thing is that as organizations, that we tend to lag behind the rumors, myths, and misconceptions that are peddled out there. They seem to run faster and way ahead of us. And when you then want to go back and try and bust those myths, people's mindsets would already have been set on what has been said before by the rumors peddlers. So as an organization, this has been quite an area that has been an issue for all of us. So we have been publishing, trying to make sure that the misinformation about coronavirus is tackled and information is given and the bureaucracy that also our organizations, not just as WHO, but our organizations have, does not allow us to be at the same pace as the rumors that will be flying about, which is something that we need to look into as organizations. So the misinformation definitely is fatal. It can actually kill because people are not adhering to the information that we'll be sending out. Over. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zora. Jane, I'll quickly move over to you. Noting that you're coming from Uganda, what will be your comments around the systems that have been put in place by the government of Uganda to ensure that there is ease of access by the media, especially community media, when it comes to how they report? Would you say or highlighted some of the challenges that have inhibited the media from being accurate and also sensitive in their reportage, if there has been any cases where there were inaccuracies or sensationalism in how especially community media has been reporting on COVID-19? Over to you, Jane. Okay, I've asked you to unmute. Are you able to unmute? Yeah, kindly go ahead, Jane.
Thank you very much. And sorry for that time, I just had connectivity challenges. I've changed the service provider. Hopefully this one will be more stable.
Okay, thank you.
I want to first of all, there's a quick comment here that came. Some Dr. Comical in his addresses. How do people receive his pressers? I want to say that one, his pressers have been received with mixed feelings. In the case of Uganda, it is not that the public do not have confidence in government. I think the public has confidence in government. They take what government is saying serious and they listen to that. But also the comical part, the public has turned it out into kind of dramatizing out some of the situations. And for example, last evening, the president again spoke and unlocked, part of the economy, and so some other parts of the economy that had been closed, like saloons, will now open, and then our local transport on motor bicycles, locally called border borders, will also resume. But each of these have been given strict standards of operating procedures. And one of them for these border riders has been that they should be able to register all their clients. And so there's been a lot of drama around there that, okay, these are people who don't know how to read and write. How is it going to happen? And there's been a lot of dramatizing that, and that has gone on to social media. So having said that, I will now go back to a couple of the things that I was saying. I was saying that the experience of Uganda has been, especially for the community radio stations, we have not had challenges with respect to getting verified information, because there has been task forces that have been formed in each of the regions, and community radios can very easily get verified information. And then this is what we've been using for our broadcasts and sharing with the communities. The challenge has been, like I was saying when I went off, adapting to online based, almost at once, and then with poor connectivity. Most of the stations that the community radio stations, of course, are in remote areas where even the internet infrastructure is not so good. So those have been some of the challenges that we have been seeing. But fortunately, we've been working around some of these. For example, just to ensure that there is not so much disinformation, some of the information has been packaged and centrally produced and then shared. By centrally here, I mean, the government has produced some, but also media practitioners have produced lots of public service adverts and content that we have been able to share for dissemination. So what has then happened is now the community radios were left with only translation to do and then be able to put this on air. Just to kind of say at government level, government has done its part. The task force have been working very hard, and there is confidence in what the government is doing, and there's confidence in the response from government and how it's being done. And the community radios, even the mainstream media, the non-community radios or the national radios have had really, really increased response towards this. There's been kind of a solidarity around this is something that we've got to fight together, and it is something that we've got to do, because the message that has been clear is that this COVID-19 can be fought off if we change the way we are doing things, if we can wash our hands more regularly. And so the onus is on us to do something. So there's been a lot of work amongst the media houses, both community radios and all and the other, to try and get the right information to the last person I submit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jane. I will now quickly move over to our chat section, and we have a comment from, it's actually a question from Stambuli, and I'm sure it's directed to Major Mtambudzi. The question is, what is the government doing to remove bureaucracy in information reach at community level so that correct COVID-19 information can be accessed by the general public? Local professionals keep referring us to their bosses, which then do not work for local communities. So that's a question for you, Dr. Mtambudzi. I'll also quickly just read sent through. We are honored to be joined by the UNESCO Chair on Community Media, Professor Vinod Pavarala, and his comment is community infodemic that some participants are referring to, because community radios broadcast information by, of, and for the community itself acts as an effective check on misinformation and fake news. The last comment that I'll read is coming from, I'm thinking it's a response from Clarice. The main challenges we experience is related to social myths. Villagers continue with some behaviors that are risky on the basis that they have to respect Ubuntu. Social distancing at funerals and family gatherings are not being honored. Dr. Mtambudzi, if you can respond to that question and any other that you would want to also pick from the chat section, that would be most appreciated. Over to you, Dr. Mtambudzi.
Thank you very much, Vivian. Thank you very much, colleagues. Maybe the first one that I just want to respond to is, why does the public we need to listen out and not put words in other people's mouths. I simply, in some instances, members of the public tended to question some of the information that comes from government. I think there is a difference between questioning or not believing on a pronouncement and not having a confidence in government. I think that one is a loaded political statement. Thank you for that one. Then the other question also is, what is the government doing to ensure that public gets confidence in government? I answered that one. Then the other question that was directed to me was, Dr. Mtambudzi, is there a scientific team of experts guiding, I think, the government and president You saw when is the peak going to be? Also, can yesterday's pronouncements not be delinked from July 31? I'm not very sure what that question is asking. Politically expedient. What informs such a lockdown, especially now, rising infections? Since when? Okay. Yeah, I find the questions also kind of political. This kind of questions. These questions, I find them very political. Well, structure. There is the government actually appointed a medical doctor, a former permanent secretary in the Ministry of Health, to head coordination of the government's response. She's the national coordinator on COVID matters, and she has a team of experts that work with her. So they have. When I came here, I did not come to unpack the truth about COVID. I thought I was going to discuss about fake news and its impact on information around COVID. So I might not have details as to exactly when, for instance, the peak is going to be, but also that will only be a research-based prediction. You know, it will be a research-based prediction, which can come out to be correct or incorrect. If you look at the trends here in Africa, the trend has not been moving on the same, with the same, following the same, in the manner in which it has been happening on other continents. So it might not be easy. This was highlighted today, for instance, by Tony on Africa, trying to account or explain why the COVID has not been, its spread has not been as rapid as it has been on other continents. And but their conclusion is that it's better to prepare for the West. The continent should just expect that the West is going to come. But even them, despite the world-renowned team of experts, they are also saying they are only thinking that it might take that route. And the main reason why they take that route, which is the worst case scenario, is because they think it's better to be prepared for the West than to say this thing will fizzle out. So I cannot be specific about when that is going to happen. Then can yesterday's pronouncements not be delinked from July 31? Well, I don't know what July 31 is other than the end of a month. This month, if there is anything political about July 31, let it be. But the fact of the matter is that for the past 2 or 3 weeks, we have just seen our numbers exponentially rising to around, now they are close to 2,000. So if this doesn't make sense in anyone's mind, that the more these numbers increase, the more the rate of a spread of the disease. Therefore, it is a great national threat to, national security in the country. Then I think there will be a problem with the thinking of that individual. So whether people want to link it to politics or not, I'm not a politician, but I, as a communication officer in the pandemic, feel that it is important for government to put in place measures that will reduce the spread of the pandemic. I will not be able to account for anything else that is political because I'm not a politician. Then what informs such a lockdown, especially now, obviously, is rising infections. And since when and the numbers have been coming out, and I think for the past 3-4 weeks, that's when we have seen an exponential rise. And obviously, we expect, if you look at the amount in society, it means when I've got 2,000, be greater. So the threat is greater for the country. Then Mashonaland West has recorded 2 COVID-19 death cases last week, but on the daily statistics government, it has recorded 1 as of yesterday. There are various reasons why that happens. There's a 2-tier or 3-tier testing system, for instance. The first one is just screening, and then they've got the other PCR tests that they do, or the antibodies one and the PCR tests. So, and then the time also that results come out. Sometimes also there are corrections or repeats. So there are various dynamics that happen that can make the statistics not tally. And they always try to explain the reasons why. Sometimes they test someone, they test positive, they retest again because for various reasons, maybe they've suspected something and they discover that that person is not actually positive, or vice versa. Sometimes there is, people are tested and the results take time for various reasons, friction maybe 3-4 days. And if that happens, you then get a situation in which they try to correct figures that were wrong. So it's normal to have that. I don't think, given what Zora was explaining about this pandemic, this is the first time that we're having such a pandemic in a situation where social media is on top in terms of communicating. So we expect a lot of challenges, a lot of information loading, and some of it not correct. And some, but really, people have to just be kind of patient and get the correct outlook of issues. Then what is the government doing to remove bureaucracy in information reach at community level? Yeah, bureaucracy, we can try to remove it. We have tried to do that. That's why government is continuously giving out information. What I can only ask is for various communities that need to access, or community media houses that need to access information, or media houses, is you can get in touch with me on WhatsApp on 0716 801 275, 0716 801 275. WhatsApp groups where we are continuously posting information that becomes available. But also when we call out for webcasts, dissemination of information, we'll make sure you're included. So that's the only thing that that will cut a lot of bureaucracy. But in terms of accessing people, the problem is journalists feel as if their desire to access people to get information in person is immune to COVID spreading. I think we have to be cautious. We are also human beings. We carry the virus. So people will be reluctant to get into meetings with people every now and then because they are also scared of the disease. But if there are challenges, we as the Minister of Information, Publicity and Broadcasting Services are there to facilitate media so that they access information. So feel free to get in touch with us, and then we will ensure that whatever office you want to access, you access. To think that government will completely open up and say, yeah, okay, everywhere, just walk in and get what you want, I think that is expecting more than is. Community media is, I think that one has been read. It was good information. Yes, community media can do that. In our country, we had a deficiency. We didn't have enough community radio stations, but government working with the stakeholders such as ZACRAS and others, they are now full-fledged UNESCO. They are now kind of accelerating the pace of making sure that we have more representative community radio stations in the country. So we hope that we are going to benefit by deploying these community radio stations, because this, as has been pointed out by the specialists, UNESCO specialists, it helps because the community radio stations will speak to their own communities. And they know the issues that are sensitive. They know how to break through the sensitive barriers and ensure that people get the message. So we hope licenses were issued out. I mean, a call for license was issued out. A number of communities were asked to apply. I think we hope as we continue, there'll be more calls and more community radio stations will be licensed, and that will improve the communication landscape in the country. Then I think I've really attended to issues that were directed to me. I can see that Dr. Mpofu has just said, I understand it, is laughing all the way out. Thank you very much for that one. If there are any other questions, I will always attend to them when I get another opportunity. For now, I think let me stop so that it can be a better inclusive discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Mtambuzi. We've also taken the privilege of typing in your WhatsApp number on the chat platform for those who would want to engage you on these and any other issues. But now I'll quickly move to Clarice. There's a question directed to you from Dr. Mpofu, where he's asking if there's an interaction between villagers. If there's no heavy migration, villages seem justified in not social distancing. And at national level, has there been information in all languages? Clarice, if you can briefly respond to that question before we move over to the recommendations section.
Yes, thank you very much. I think there has been an effort, like on ZTV, they also speak in local languages, but it is not enough because most of the people that we represent, sometimes they don't have access to the ZTV sometimes they don't have access to the other channels, the radio channels that are national. So in that case, it means that our roles at community level becomes very important. That is point number one. Then second point is that surely we have less traffic from the urban to the rural areas, because when the lockdown started, I think there's been that the guidelines has been limiting that kind of movement, except for those that are visiting their families or coming to serve in terms. We go to Harare, we come back when we network with our other partners who are supporting the dissemination of information. Of concern, perhaps, is that yes, we have cases where sometimes there are people who move within the borders without ourselves being able to account for them, or some people who may run away from quarantine centers without us accounting for them. So the concern really is that some of the movements, when they are public, it's easy for us to deal with it. But when it is secretive, and some people feel they are their relatives or they are their closer friends, they don't want to make that information public. Which then goes back to my first point to say, if advocacy and the communication of information in local language has to increase, it means there is need to increase the flow of information, which can only be done by local players because they know the dynamics, they know how to from the discussion. I think you have seen that sometimes there's been struggling with people who may question who he is. It's because of that kind of also of our understanding of trust issues, to say if it may be coming from a government player, perhaps it may not necessarily be truthful because of other political interpretation. So when there are local players, I think my point has been expressed to say that local players are trusted more, and local players have better skills to try and ensure that the information is communicated adequately, which has been our main challenge.
Okay, thank you, Clarice. Before I give the floor to Zora, there is an issue that Jane highlighted in a presentation, that the formation of regional task forces in Uganda is really assisted in making ease of access to information by community media. Is this possibly an intervention that could be proposed maybe to government, or are there existing regional information points that you access information from without necessarily waiting for daily updates from central government? Hello, Clarice?
Yes, I think like you are saying, Vivian, surely if we were to wait for central government, the main challenges are people tend to feel that they are being managed, or it is intended to achieve something that are not necessarily what it was to achieve. It is because of that element of trust. So for me, the best way to respond to such a situation would be, firstly, to ensure that the testing that is happening, or the information that is being goes to the local level, communicated by local players, although it may be still generated or verified. Also accept that there are tendencies of people abusing some of the information, which ends up possibly difficult to confirm whether it is truthful or fake. Then some of the things that may need to also happen is to say that that link between central and local government becomes stronger. If at the end of the day, there were to be licensing of community radios, it can solve, because for us, we have been receiving, as part of experience, we have cases that we have also been following, people coming and we feel they might be sick enough to be interpreted as perhaps they may be needing testing, and some of them have died. So when we talk about these cases, the sensitivity that you may not be sure if it may not be said that like we are going against, because we have journalists that have been arrested by talking about issues that may be defined to be sensitive. So that challenge is that there is a fear to talk about the cases represent those who are speaking sometimes in languages that may appear like they are going against the COVID guideline. So that is our fear, which may need a lot of working around. I think this discussion kind of has helped to say, how do we bridge that gap between central government and the local communities?
Okay, thank you, Clarice. We are now moving to the recommendation section, session. Zora, possibly what would be your recommendations in terms of how the media can better report on the COVID-19 story in terms of accuracy and also sensitivity? And possibly you can also talk about the COVID-19 vaccine trials and also the media, so to speak. Zora, over to you.
Oh, thank you very much. I think I'll start with the vaccine trials. In the media, we had the story of the French doctor. Should a vaccine come, it should be tried on Africans, and that got people from Africa very upset. But people know that WHO would never allow a vaccine that has not been proven to work to go out and to be rolled out. As we speak, there are vaccine trials for COVID vaccine, for COVID-19, that are being done in South Africa as of 24th of June. And as in other countries, as you have noticed in the UK, in other countries, they are also doing these vaccine trials. So whichever one works out to be most effective is the one that will be rolled out. So the media is also free to get this information from WHO, because it is in the best interest of WHO to save lives and not to harm people. And then on the recommendation that more to interact more with the media, to have, as Dr. Mtambudze has just done, given his number, that to me is
Hello, sorry, Zora, we seem to have lost you. Hello? Okay. Yes.
Hello, sorry.
Yeah, we had lost you there. May you kindly repeat your last point?
Okay, my last point was government and partners should open up their doors for the media. As Dr. Mtambudze has just done, he has given his number, which makes it easy for people to, whenever they want information, there is someone that they can talk to. Have more media briefs where technocrats as well as people from government are engaging the media regularly on issues, so that there are no issues that are left untouched. So it's that accessibility that I'm talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Zora. I'll also speak to the comment that you put on the chat section, where you said that the risk, I'm assuming it's the risk communication pillar, will be conducting sensitization for district health promotion and environmental health officers, as well as traditional and religious influential leaders at community level for southern and northern districts next week in Zimbabwe. There is also a comment from Priscil, some who briefs that are quantitative and lack the kind of information that journalists can use to raise awareness in communities regarding what exactly government is doing to combat COVID-19. We'll now move to you, Dr. Mtambudze, in terms of the recommendations that you might want to put forward. What recommendations do you have to the media and other stakeholders on how best we can improve accuracy and sensitivity in reporting on COVID-19, And possibly you can also respond to a question from Admire, where he's saying, what is the ministry doing to dispel myths and conspiracy theories around COVID-19, especially in rural areas where access to verified public health information is limited? Over to you, Dr. Mtambudzi.
Thank you, Vivian. Thank you, colleagues. Okay, yeah, maybe to first say that what we do is to just ensure that that is correct, that informs people of the truth of what exactly is happening. And the various things that we did was we have packaged quite a number of handbooks that have been distributed countrywide. In addition to that, we have packaged a number of adverts. We've packaged a number of communication packages that have been shared on TV, on radio. We've used artists to speak out the message, but also we've brought in experts from the Ministry of Health, from WHO, from other sectors to come and speak to the nation on issues. So we are right now, given the exponential rise in cases from below 50 to close to 2,000 in the past 3-4 weeks, we are also planning to rejuvenate our messaging so that we speak to the current situation and the current threat that faces the nation. So we are doing things to ensure that, but also in the ministry to acquire about 20 licenses for webinar. So the minister will be able to webcast and convene meetings that involve journalists, media, members of the public, and discuss issues, but also will be able to include on those platforms various stakeholders and players in other ministries, in other departments that are critical in getting the right message out. So government is trying always best that it can. It will never be sufficient. There will always be some criticism. We welcome criticism so that we can improve, but we don't want the mischievous questions that seem to want that. So yeah, that's what we are doing. Then in terms of recommendation, I think as a people, as a nation, but also as a continent and as a world, we are one people. I've seen messages that say together we'll conquer this. If we are divided, if we are bent on a fault finding, if we are, and we are not listening, I think we'll have serious problems. This is a threat to humanity. We obviously resources will never be enough. I'm not justifying any leakages if there are any, but there are corrective measures that are done to correct that. But it's a fact that resources are not enough, and given the limited nature of resources, our response will also be limited. But we can get the best out of it. We can actually get the best out of what we are able to produce for the nation in terms of responding to this. And the society, I recommend that people, let's be responsible. Let's enjoy technology. Let's communicate with each other. Let's share information. But what do you gain by propagating fake news, which actually puts other people, puts society at risk, greater risk, because they have got a misunderstanding of issues that has been triggered by peddling fake news. Let's not peddle fake news. Let's report responsibly, both as media as well as
Tambudzi. Jane, we move over to you. What will be your recommendations in terms of how the media, and more specifically community media, can better report on COVID-19 in terms of accuracy and sensitivity, noting some of the challenges that have been highlighted by fellow panelists and also participants of this discussion? What would you say are your recommendations? Over to you, Jane.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, I think that indeed there is a lot of information sometimes that is being churned out. And how is this information that is being churned out reaching out to the intended people that should consume it? And then when are they receiving it, and through which platforms? I think these are important, points that we need to consider, but also we have a huge opportunity of receiving this information and packaging it better so that it speaks to the issues in our localities, because there are some community issues that are different. The way a community socializes may not be the way community X socializes. So we who work in community radios have the opportunity, because we understand our communities better and we know how we can speak to them because we have been speaking to them through our programming. So we've got to also learn to integrate this information into our programming so that they are able to listen or receive the information. Otherwise, if it comes and and we just put it out there the way it is, we risk not even speaking to the people that the intended listeners of the people that need to receive this information. So we in community media and we in radio need to receive this information, but again, package or repackage or unpackage, and then put it out in received best, and will speak to the issues within our localities. Otherwise, if we take it like one shoe fits all, we risk leaving a certain category of the population out without getting information. And also we have to be mindful that, okay, the people that we are trying to talk to and what platforms are, are being used. Do they have access? Do they have the touch points to access this information from those touch points? That is why it's important for us to spread out the way we reach the different people. For example, if you're talking TV, what is the penetration rate of TVs in a certain community? If we are saying buy airspace and use the TVs, who are you going to speak to? Who will you leave out? Community radios, do people have all the community radios? How else can we package in certain ways that we are able to reach the last person? For me, I think that the recommendation would be, yes, it's okay for government to buy airspace and share the information, but also got to play our part by speaking to the communities in languages they understand and in ways they understand, in a fact-checked way. Thank you.
Thank you for that contribution and recommendation, Jane. Possibly, if you can also respond to a question in terms of regional partnerships and collaboration. Do you think that as community radio in Africa, we are doing enough to share notes on how best we can report on the pandemic, issues around capacity enhancement, and any other interventions that we can look at? Do you think we're doing enough as community media practitioners in Africa?
I really think we are not doing enough. And this is a good step in the right direction, ZACRAS, and I must applaud you for that, because I believe that there's a lot of competence in the different regions that we are not sharing. And there's a lot of learnings and a lot of doing things together. So I think that you have begun, this kind of collaboration, is where our strength lies, because if we can share experiences, share expertise, learn and unlearn together, then we will be able to speak, in a stronger voice, in a better way, and inform the people much better. Because the community radio, the advantage that a community radio has is that it speaks to the last person. And this is very powerful if we are able to all strengthen our competence and work together. So yes, I believe ZACRAS is doing a good job, and let us move on and move further with collaboration, not only on reporting pandemics, but there are lots of community issues, and there are lots of challenges that community radios face, that if we face them together, we shall be more relevant and even thrive, not just survive. I submit.
Thank you, Jane, for that response. Before I move to our last panelist, Clarice Maduku, I'll quickly read out some of the recommendations from Dr. Mpofu, where he's saying, generally, I think the best is to buy space in the media, ABC, IT, radios, community radio, and give information there. Don't wait for journalists. Buy 2 minutes in every broadcast station. I think that was directed to Dr. Mutambudzi. There is also another contribution: community broadcasting links local communities with central government, which is the objectives of devolution. the licensing of community radio stations is the answer. And another response from Jane, where she was saying, yes, buying media space is one thing, but also we in the media have an opportunity to package this material within our programming so that we speak to the issues within our localities. Of course, all this has to be done in a fact-checked way. The last comment that I'll read: in this pandemic, the media and government should collaborate to ensure members of the public have all the information they need to protect themselves. I'll now move to Clarice as we are about to wind this discussion. Clarice, what would be your recommendations on how best you as online content producers and also community media prospective applicants want to put forward either to who or the government on how best they can support or offer support systems which enable you to be more accurate and sensitive in your reportage of COVID-19. Clarice, okay. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Vivian. I think it has been a very interesting discussion. And I think we are all agreed that community broadcasting is the missing link and it can close the gap. So the first point would be from World Health Organization that are represented is to capacitate communities themselves. I think what lacks sometimes is capacity. And this capacity, as I speak to it, has to do with the people themselves understanding the critical role of information as is contained in our constitution. When they are capacitated as a community through their local initiatives, it means that they can go beyond. Like since we are mainly online, and online talks of Facebook, Twitter, messages, sometimes SMS, sometimes we make CDs to redistribute. If there is capacity that this information is strong, it can then also be used to go beyond to community meetings, which in our experience, the most impact that we have made in our day-to-day life has been to disseminate this information to community meetings that are ongoing, that this includes deep tank or it is an SDC meeting. So I'm talking of capacity building, capacity in the community actors. Then the second point has to do with it comes to the government of Zimbabwe. I know that there's been calls for licensing and that we have applied. This may also need to be respected, such that most of those who applied may need to be licensed. But when you are licensed, it removes the self-regularization that we are having. The current challenge, which should be effected during for this recommendation, is that when you self-regulate, there's kind of fear because within this lockdown, those who are helping to enforce the lockdown are the security. So people tend to fear to express themselves, tend to fear to communicate information because they're not so sure whether it's accurate or not accurate. And sometimes if we are not licensed as community actors, other players do want to diffuse this message on the basis that you are not licensed. So we end up getting the challenge. So at the height of it, it must be community licensing for the government of Zimbabwe. At the height of it is capacity building, which we can get support from the World Health Organization, because most of the kind of guidelines that we are working on at the moment, they are more behavioral. We are not getting as much detail to what to do, the scientific issues. When someone has been found to be positive, for example, of COVID, there is not much information to say, what do you do? What we have in saturation is wear your masks, social distance, but what to do when someone is found to be positive? People tend to panic. So World Health Organization can work on that, which we can be part of through a local language and localizing it to deal with social myths.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you, Clarice. And thank you to all our panelists for their insights on the topic that we're discussing on accurate and sensitive reporting on COVID-19. It's now 12:23, and I'm aiming that we finish by 12:30 as initially agreed. So back to you, Zora. What will be your parting remarks in brief as we are now winding down the session?
Thank you very much. This has been a very rich discussion, and I will take this back to the team that we have. I like what Mr. Maduku talked about, where he said short clips that talk about, say, what to do with someone when someone tests positive. And we have two cases here. You have somebody who tests positive, but they are asymptomatic. What does that mean? We will look into that. We will take that as a very important issue. And then for those that are symptomatic, that have the symptoms and have to stay at home, how to take care of them. All that is information that we have as WHO, and we will be able to share with the communities. But the issue of community engagement is actually part of WHO's mandate. How we engage the community has changed because of the way COVID-19 is passed on to human beings. So where people are not having to congregate and then touch each other is a brilliant idea. And we are hoping that Zimbabwe will join the rest of the continent in having community radios where people can sit in their homes without having to gather together and listen. And also this can also be interactive. So I'm hoping that this is the way to go, and WHO will always be ready to share the information from a technical point of view, and also to have our technocrats come and support communities where possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Zora, for those closing remarks. Dr. Mtambudzi, what would be your parting remarks in brief?
Well, I want to thank you organizing this platform. I think it had a rich exchange, sharing experiences from as far afield as Uganda. I want to thank you, colleagues, for coming on board. And I want to just maybe say the issue of communicating properly is our responsibility. We, as a government, we are putting effort to ensure that our citizens are informed, albeit constrained by resources. Let's continue to share ideas and ensure that we get the right message out. If we are not communicating properly and they don't raise it, then it means that the deficiency will lead to greater damage in our society. So yes, it's not easy, but we have got our ears open. We might speak with emphatic voices. That's our nature. That's how God created us. But we are amenable to advice and criticism, and as long as we find it genuine and useful. Humanity is a threat to Zimbabwe. We must put our heads together and find solutions. I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mtambudzi. Jane, in brief, your closing remarks.
Thank you very much. I think I have pretty said most of what I wanted to say, but just to emphasize the importance of such discussions, and then also to appreciate what ZACRAS is doing, and to say that, yes, let the collaboration go on and let us do this thing together. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Clarice?
My parting remarks is that we continue to appreciate the role being played by ZACRAS, especially for us who are community radio initiatives in terms of capacity building us and giving us the confidence to be able to interact at the level of government and also the level of the World Health we will get these licenses to make an impact, to make the change, to close the gap.
Thank you, Clarice, and thank you to our panelists who were Zoro Zai Machekanyanga from the World Health Organization. We also had Dr. Major Anyway Mtambuzi, the Director for Media Services in the Ministry of Information, Publicity and Broadcasting Services. We also had Jane, who was joining us from Uganda, from Coach FM, and also a coordinator for one of the associations in Uganda and Sudan. We also had the Clarice Maduku from Muganga in Chipinge. I also wish to thank our participants for their insightful comments and also questions that they were posing to our panelists. I also wish to thank UNESCO and also the European Union for the support rendered to ZACRAS to enable us to hold these interventions which seek to enhance regional collaboration in partnership between Eastern and Southern African community radio stations. Once again, thank you everyone. Kindly do send through your messages to ZACRAS at zacrasim.org if you would want to have a copy of the audio recording of the discussion. We also have a Google platform that we have created for East and Southern African community radios. So please also do feel free to send through your email address and we'll add you onto the group if you are in Eastern or Southern African community radio station. Once again, thank you everyone. It's good day from me.
That's